Hello my loves, welcome back to my YouTube. I hope you have all been absolutely incredible. I am finally sitting down to talk about all things gut health. This has been something that I have been meaning to make a YouTube video about for honestly quite a while, but to be completely transparent, I wanted to get further along this journey before I started, I guess, giving advice and, going super into depth, because if you've gone through a gut health journey, you know how just up and down it constantly is. And I definitely didn't want to jump on here and give advice that I kind of didn't practice and preach myself. And I guess just give a little bit more insight as to what I have done to really help. I won't say completely heal my gut health, because there's definitely still a long way to go. However, I've made leaps and bounds of progress, and I know that it's something that so many people struggle with, and I know it is such a isolating experience, and you can feel so hopeless, and it's so overwhelming, and it's so confusing. And I was looking for answers for so many years and felt like I was constantly hitting a brick wall and getting absolutely nowhere, and my symptoms were getting worse and worse. My life was honestly deteriorating. Even though I was living such a healthy, active lifestyle, the way I felt, the way I looked absolutely did not represent that. So I definitely wanted to jump on here and share a lot more with you guys. I have a ton of questions from you guys, and I can't wait to get into all of it and hopefully give you guys some really good advice, help you feel less alone, and also encourage you to make sure that you really do start that gut healing journey and heal from the inside out and start genuinely feeling like your healthiest self. Now, I have actually tried to film this yesterday, and I realized that context is going to be very important when it comes to all the advice I'm going to give, my story, and hopefully helping you guys realize if you guys need to go get extra support yourself. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to have a part 1 and a part 2, because there are so many questions to get through with you guys, and I really do want to try my absolute best to give you guys as much support as possible and as much advice as possible. So I'm going to do a part 1 of my personal journey, everything that led me to the point where I knew I needed to turn it around and actually go get that help after looking for answers within doctors for so many years, and also a bit of background as to what had potentially led me to have the severe gut issues that I did have, so that maybe you can look at that within yourself and possibly see if there is some internal damage you have done. So I thought that was quite an important perspective to add to this video. So we're gonna have a part 1 of my journey, my symptoms, everything that led me to that point, and then also my gut healing and all the steps we took to heal and to get myself into the position I am now. And part 2 will be a big, humongous Q&A. I got down a ton of the questions that you guys have asked me, and I just put them into my notes. So yeah, so there is a ton to get through for you guys, and I wanted to make sure I could give you guys the most. And when I was trying to film yesterday and talk about my story, I realized it wasn't a little 5-minute brief introduction. There is so much involved. So that's what we're going to do today. A disclaimer straight off the bat, guys, is I am not a naturopath. So a lot of the information I'm going to be giving you guys is going to be based off what I have been working on specifically with my naturopath, all the advice she's given me, everything that she has worked with me on. However, I am a qualified nutritionist, also been on my own health and fitness journey for well over 10 years. I do have a lot of experience for myself and with many clients, so I can speak from a bit of background from both. So a bit of background about myself is I started my health and fitness journey probably about 12 to 13 years ago. This was around about year 7, and my journey back in those days, as we can imagine, definitely did not start off on the healthiest foot. A lot of the information that was given out there was absolutely not the healthiest. So I went down a very restrictive, obsessive, overtraining, that type of route, and I led myself to have quite a severe eating disorder, and eventually hospitalized with anorexia nervosa. So that is kind of how my fitness journey began. So it was a lot of under eating, a lot of overtraining, and then a lot of obsessive behaviors. In my recovery journey, I'm going to kind of try and skim over this because this is a whole nother topic in and of itself. In my recovery journey, it absolutely was not linear, and although I had healthier habits that led me to gaining weight and a healthier relationship towards food and everything, there was still a lot of obsessive tendencies, whether it came to overtraining, or whether it came to under eating to some degree. Like a lot of dieting throughout many years. Honestly, majority of all of my younger years were dieting to some degree. So that is a lot of stress on the body that I placed on it for honestly probably a good 10 years. And throughout those years, so let's give it a 10-year kind of period, I definitely experienced a lot of fluctuations in my weight that did feel really unmanageable, in the sense that my lifestyle was extremely healthy, and anyone else living my lifestyle would look impeccable. Like, they would look absolutely incredible. However, I experienced big fluctuations in weight literally overnight. Like, I could wake up one day and be 3 kilos heavier than the day before. And I just felt like I had a lot of hormonal imbalances. It felt really, really, really hard to lose weight. So even if I was eating pretty low calories, I would really struggle to lose any weight. I'd be training a lot, I'd be under eating, and I was looking really fluffy and like a lot of inflammation, and honestly just didn't look like I trained as hard as I did, or ate as good as I did. So I always felt really frustrated in that, and I always tied it back to the damage I would have done to my body from being so sick for such a long time and under eating, and like the hormonal damage that I would have done from those younger years, those pivotal years in your life. To put it into perspective, when you have anorexia, which is when you take an eating disorder to a very extreme level and you're extremely underweight, you're not giving your body any nutrients, and it's not absorbing nutrients, and your brain isn't working properly. These are like the pivotal development years of your life, and if you're not giving your body the nutrients it needs in that time, there's a lot of implications that can happen. And I thought that it was just, consequences of my actions from when I was younger, and that I guess it would take a lot of time to reverse that damage. And I just felt like as the years went on, I just constantly felt roadblocks when it came to looking the part. So I knew in the back of my head that I was facing a lot more challenges than the normal person, and I guess I just continued on. Because I found it so hard to lose weight, I also felt like if I ate more food, I would gain weight really easily as well. So I was constantly living in like a low amount of calories for very prolonged periods of time. And then on top of that, training really consistently, probably training still too much for a lot of those years, and training really, really intensely, and pairing training really intensely with realistically not eating enough food to really support your body with the energy demands. It's just not a great breeding ground for your hormones. So that's like just a little bit of a background of, I guess, the first symptoms I felt like I had, where I felt a lot of resistance when it came to weight loss. No matter how much I did, it's almost like I looked worse every time I tried to do more. And it was just really confusing, because the information you hear is like, you're eating too much, do more sort of thing. So that was kind of back in those days. And I just remember always going and talking to people and getting coaches and just being like, what is wrong? And, they would not really believe me when I'd say, no, I'm sticking to the meal plan. I'm doing all my sessions. I train really hard. It wasn't an issue of my effort, but it was like my body was just not responding. Because of my very obsessive background and my thought process of doing more and more and more, I would say like I kind of thrived off high intensity. Whether that was just I convinced myself I thrived off that, or I really did enjoy it. I do enjoy high intensity training. I love the feeling of it. So I was doing a lot of high intensity training. I would say that made up the majority of my training. So let's say I was training 6 to 7 days per week, and it was a lot of high intensity stuff. And I eventually moved into CrossFit, which we know CrossFit is very, very, very high intensity. And I was obsessed with CrossFit. I trained honestly 6 to 7 days per week, sometimes multiple sessions in a day. I also then worked at a CrossFit gym. So I was very, very, very active. I was doing all these classes, and then also pairing that with, I was still eating extremely, extremely clean. Like all throughout those years, I still ate a very, very clean diet. And when I was doing CrossFit, it's like my body just fluffed out. It's like that high intensity training, my body was just like not coping well with that. And I always kind of knew when I had like a stressful job and stuff like that, it's like my body did not respond well to stress. So I was kind of aware of that. However, I didn't have the knowledge, and we don't have the knowledge we do now, as to how much stress affects the body, whether that is work stress, life stress, or stress from our training and not recovering properly. So I was quite young. I was training super hard. My body was constantly in a high stress state. Also self-employed, being a PT, which doesn't sound that stressful, but I'm just someone who I tend to overwork. So I was very stressed at work, and then also my body was in a constant state of stress because it was constantly getting underfed as well. So pairing all of those together, a breeding ground for inflammation, which I now know. So I did CrossFit for quite a few years, and I really did love it. However, I always felt just like I never looked the part and never looked how hard I trained. Then I unfortunately, but also very fortunately, injured myself. I pulled the disc in my back, so I got to a point where I couldn't do anything in CrossFit. I could hardly walk. It was excruciatingly painful to literally walk from here to the other side of the room. So I couldn't really do any training, and I had to completely strip back my training. And that's when I actually moved to specific just weight training and really focusing on my form from the ground up and just literally pulling everything back from 100 all the way back down to 0, squatting body weight again, all that sort of stuff. And so I really stripped back all of that intensity when it came to my training, did a completely different style of training. In this time also, I did get into a relationship. So within that relationship, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, I started eating, not be as restrictive when it came to my eating. So I started to eat foods out, and I started to eat a bit more and started to, make more fun dishes and not be so regimented with the foods I'd always eaten. And I did actually gain quite a bit of weight in that initial few months, but it was also the first time I genuinely felt no guilt when it came to food. I had, over those years, in my recovery journey from my ED, every single year my relationship towards food definitely got better and better. My relationship towards training got better and better, and I was not as restrictive, I was not as obsessive, I was finding more balance. However, it was still not the healthiest of behaviors when it came to, definitely was training too much, definitely was still not eating enough, and my life still definitely revolved around training and that health and fitness all the time. And then I got into my relationship, and then I started to have more balance, and I did gain a bit of initial weight, but it was the first time I was probably actually eating enough calories, like over the 2,000 mark, which was something that I don't think I ever did in my younger adolescent years, where we should be giving our body the most nutrients because that's when it's needing it the most. But then pairing that as well with the specific weight training, and then I also in this time started following a structured weight training program. So I've always followed programs throughout all my years of training, but it was very like following random workouts on Instagram, following YouTube videos, just doing random things that I enjoy, random workouts every single week. I started following this structured weight training program, and then also eating a lot more food, and then just having a lot more food freedom where I wasn't obsessed with the calories and everything. I'd go eat a meal out once or twice a week, and there was just like, I would order whatever I wanted, and still ate. It was a good 80-20 balance that I finally truly had. I started to notice like the inflammation was kind of just stripping off my body, and I was like feeling like I was looking the way I should look. I was feeling a lot leaner. My body was just looking a lot more fit, and the best way to just describe it was all those years whilst I was doing the most, I felt really out of control of my body. It was like no matter what I did, I was not in control of how my body looked. And it was just like, it was a guessing game. Every single day when I woke up, it was like, okay, it's going to be a good day, it's going to be a bad day. Like super fluffy, super inflamed, super lethargic, just felt really gross and uncomfortable within myself. And then I started to really feel like it was more predictable. Like it wasn't like such huge fluctuations on a literal daily basis. So I started to really find my deep love for weight training, and then that's when I really felt like I was finally also building a lot of muscle and a lot of muscle definition, and the inflammation was stripping off my body, and I was just feeling so much more confident and so much better within myself. That is when my first transformation happened, okay? So after years and years and years of dieting and being super, super restrictive and super like obsessive and high intensity training and doing the absolute most, training genuinely the hardest I ever had, eating the cleanest I ever had, and looking so inflamed, so fluffy, felt so uncomfortable, to then having just like training less. I was training 5 days per week, a structured weight training program, and eating out, like having such a better balance, eating more food, having more balance. And I always said that initial weight gain was so necessary because it was allowed my body to feel safe in the amount of calories it was consuming, to allow my body to kind of reset in a way. And I so strongly believe that I needed to have that initial weight gain that was uncomfortable, but also it really helped heal my relationship towards food, find more balance. And then that also allowed me to reset for this next phase, which was what I just mentioned. Then from there, that honestly continued for a few years, and it was the first time I didn't experience such awful bloating and a lot of head noise towards food. And it was just such a pivotal point in my life. And I do definitely credit a lot of that to being like secure in a relationship as well. I think a lot of people probably can relate to that. And then also just feeling really confident within myself at the gym. And then, the results I was getting from the gym, I was increasing in strength. I was super strong, and I really loved and enjoyed my training. I was training less. I wasn't just killing myself in the gym every single day, and I was improving so much more. So I guess that was the first realization that less is more when it came to my training. Like, my body was not responding well to these super intense workouts, and also training 7 days per week was so unnecessary. It was like training less, I was getting a better result. Instead of training for 2 hours a day, I was training for 45 to 60 minutes a day, and I was only training 5 days per week. And then I was also eating more food and having such better balance with my food and all that sort of stuff. That went on for quite a few years, and I'm going to kind of miss past that because that was a good few years. Throughout these years, although I feel like I was very much so more in control of my body composition, I definitely still noticed anytime I was in a high stress state, my body would inflame. So I'd be really fluffy, there'd be really big fluctuations in my weight, and it was only when I was like highly stressed. Then I remember doing a cut, and I was working with a coach in this time. I felt pretty good at the start of it, and then we were going through a cutting phase, and it was all pretty good until we got to those last few kilos where we really had to start amping up the intensity. We added in more HIIT sessions into, my program to help with energy, to kind of push that last little bit of the cut, plus pairing that with lower calories. And my body started to do the complete opposite. So instead of me, dropping off these final kilos, I was starting to just look more inflamed, feel more bloated, and just look realistically worse. Like, I had abs, and then it was like I was going the opposite direction. And that's when I would start to express, I am feeling worse. Like, I feel like I'm looking worse. I'm doing everything, like I'm following your plan to a T, but my body is not responding well. So that was like the first time I really started to look into, okay, whenever I do more, my body rejects it. My body tends to go in the opposite direction. Unfortunately, with that coach, I think they did think it was more of a compliance issue and that I wasn't actually following the plan. But I know myself, if I have a plan to follow, I'll follow it to a T. I have no problem doing the work. And then I ended up just stopped working with that coach at that time. And I kind of continued on my own journey for a few more years, and definitely quite a few years in this section where stress was higher in my life, just when it came to work. I was owning a gym at the time, and that was just a very it's just naturally owning a business is a very, very high stress environment, and as we know, my body does not respond well to that. So I was definitely just very inflamed, very fluffy, big fluctuations. And it was around this time as well I really realized that how much the fluctuations affected me, which was, I would have abs one day, I'd feel fantastic, and then the next day they would be completely gone and I'd feel like a completely different person. And I guess I just accepted that was me, and that was just hormone imbalances. And I went to doctors and I talked to coaches, and no one really could give me an explanation. And I just always felt like people didn't take me seriously because I looked good enough, but I knew it's not how I should have looked. Like, it wasn't, if that makes sense. It's like, I feel like we know our body. I was always very, very in tune with my body, and it's like I might look decent to people, but for how hard I work and how much this is my life, I feel like I should look better. And you see other people on social media and they're not doing nearly as much as you, and they look 10 times better than you. And I was like, it's just not adding up. Like, I don't know how I can do more to look better. Like, how can I do more here? So it was just big fluctuations and just really feeling like I wasn't in control and being really, really confused. And, spoke to a lot of coaches, went to doctors to get blood tests, and just constantly trying to get answers and feeling really, really isolated in that. And honestly, I was just I was like, do I have pretty severe body dysmorphia where I see myself very differently to how others are, based on what they're saying to me? Am I overthinking this? So then there was a lot of being in my head, am I just being too hard on myself? And then also with my background as well, I was like, maybe I'm just being too hard on myself, but I really feel like I should look different, and I just don't feel like this is how I should look. And anyways, so there was a lot of that in my head. And then I was dealing with that very, very, very consistently for many, many years, ticking all the boxes, everything from, my nutrition. I still had balance, but, I was still eating very, very healthily. I was exercising, I was doing my structured weight training programs. I was walking every day. I was ticking. My sleep was always, monitored. All of these things, I was ticking all the boxes that we should be ticking, and just not really feeling like I was making any real improvements, and always feeling like I didn't have control over how my body would look on a daily basis. And the fluctuations were just so crazy. I was like, this is not normal. Where it all came to an absolute head was I went to Bali for a little holiday, and I got Bali belly whilst I was over there. I actually got it 3 times in the space of 2 weeks. If you've had Bali belly, and I recovered from that relatively quickly. Prior to Bali, I might get sick 1 to 2 times a year. I had all these gut issues, but it wasn't it wasn't controlling my life. Like I had bloating and stuff, but I thought it was just normal, like, you know, big flare-ups where my bloat would be really, really uncomfortable and painful. But I thought it was like relatively normal. Like I was like, I think we all deal with that. You always see it on social media, like it's a normal thing. And I just kind of accepted, like, you know, no one was kind of giving me answers. I wasn't getting anywhere. I was like, I guess this is just how my life is. It sucks. I just have to work harder than everyone else. And then went to Bali and felt pretty good at the start of that trip. Got Bali belly a few times, recovered relatively like quickly whilst I was over there. But when I tell you, when I got back, I was never the same. My gut health when I came back, my bloating was so severe. Like I genuinely, it was like, when I talk about bloat as well, guys, by the way, if you start to hear some noises in the background, it's just Hugo, my puppy. My bloat when I got back was so, I've always dealt with some level of bloat. But it wasn't like consuming my life, if that makes sense. Like I definitely had the big, like I had a lot of inflammation. I felt really fluffy. I didn't feel in control of my body. I felt like my body wasn't mine already. And I, felt like I was very fluffy in the face and just definitely dealt with that. But when I got back from Bali, it was just taken to a whole nother level. It's like all the gut issues I had were amplified by 10 to the point where like, I had zero control by this point. Like all the foods I'd eaten for my entire life that I'd never, ever had an issue with, all of a sudden I started getting horrible flare-ups from. And when I talk about bloat and flare-ups, I'm talking upper part of your stomach, like around my ribs, so inflamed. If you touch it, it's like, it's rock hard, but it's also all fluid. Like you can really tell that is not, you know, it's not a bloat from eating too much food. And I need to emphasize this, guys. When I'm going to be referring to bloat throughout the remainder of this video, I am not referring to eating too much food or eating foods that you know are going to make you feel a bit sick, like ice cream or something like that. I'm literally talking like flare-ups from one singular grape, for example, or any food that I'd always eaten that I'd never, ever in my life had an issue with. I was just like painful, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I would be in so much pain. I'd have to massage my stomach. I couldn't wear clothing because it'd be pushing so much, and it was just unexplainable. And typically if I had a bloat, it's like it might be bad for, hello puppy, do you want to come up here? Do you want to come up here? Okay, do not bump the camera. Don't bump the camera. Sit down. No, sit. Typically, if I had like a flare-up or some bloating sort of issues, it's like I'll have it for maybe a day or two and then it would go down. So it's like there was kind of some light at the end of the tunnel. It sucked, but it's like I knew that, you know, it would eventually go down. But then when I got back, it's like my flare-ups would last a week or longer, or they would last like multiple weeks, and it was just not going down. And then I would flare up from all the foods, and I'm talking painful. Then on top of that, I started to get really sick really often. So it was like every 2 weeks, or like at least at bare minimum every single month, I was bedridden sick. And like I mentioned, prior to Bali, I would probably get sick 1 to 2 times a year, and I'd get quick, like I'd be better really quick. I wouldn't be bedridden, and I might be sick for 2 to 3 days absolute maximum, but I'd get better and I'd be 100% super quickly. I would be in literal bed, not be able to leave my bed for a week, and it would take me like a solid week to even recover from that. And then it's like I'd have 1 week that was okay, and then I would be bedridden sick again. And that was like constant, and that went for about a year. So I was having these extreme flare-ups. I was sick all the time. My digestion was super off, and that was something that I had never really dealt with, because my digestion was always consistent. Like I said, I eat really healthy. I'm very active. So it was very, very consistent, very healthy. And then it was really inconsistent, whether it was constipation, diarrhea, just like incomplete. It was just not, I'm very in tune with my body. And that was one of the things I really picked up, where I was like, that's not right. That's not me. That's not my body. So I definitely picked up on that as well. I had awful brain fog. Like my mental health was deteriorating really rapidly. And that was something like I've been open about this on all my socials. Mental health is something I have always had to put quite a bit of conscious effort into. I feel like it's something that if I don't have like self-care practices in my everyday, I feel like my headspace naturally will try and take me down the more negative route than positive. So it's been a lot of intentional effort to kind of have myself in the mindset and the headspace that I am in today. And I was definitely noticing my mental health was going down, and I was always really, really low energy, really lethargic. Like I would have to come home every day and have a sleep. Like, I couldn't stay awake. I was so tired, so much brain fog, such low energy. It was just like I was not myself. I was starting to feel like a big shell of a human, and just honestly every single thing under the sun. My hair was super thin. So yeah, I guess that's like what my symptoms were presenting as. And I went back and forth to doctors consistently throughout that year. I got blood tests because when I got back from Bali, I was like, well, maybe I have a parasite, and we did blood tests. And if you've dealt with doctors before, they really do just do blood tests on the most basic of things that are going to tell you pretty much nothing. So yeah, I'd go to the doctors, and because their healthy range is this big, and if you think about like the clients that they deal with as well, it's typically the most unhealthy. So they're kind of basing what you're presenting as compared to the worst of the worst. And that's a lot of the time why, if you don't look as unwell as what you're saying and you're not outside of those ranges, they're not going to look too much further into it. And I was feeling really frustrated because they'd kind of be like, oh, well, you look healthy, so like, you know, see ya. And I was dealing with that from multiple different doctors. I went to specialists, and I just felt like I was constantly hitting a brick wall, and they'd be like, okay, well, like, are you exercising regularly? Are you eating good food? Are you sleeping well? Are you managing your stress? All these things. And I was like, yes, I'm doing all the things. My lifestyle is literally health, wellness. Like, I should be feeling 1 million times, but like, if I'm as healthy as what you're trying to tell me I am, and that I'm in these healthy ranges, why am I sick every single second week when I'm such a healthy person? I'm eating healthy. I'm eating pretty much only healthy foods at this point. I exercise every day. Why am I so low in energy? Why am I depressed? Why is my digestion so off? Like, all of these things, and it was just, I was getting nowhere, and I felt so hopeless. And this was at the point where it was just consuming my life, and I didn't even want to leave my house anymore because I felt so uncomfortable within my body. And my flare-ups were so bad, it was so uncomfortable to wear gym clothing or anything to the gym. And I just felt embarrassed as well because, you know, I'm on social media as a health and fitness person, and I felt like I just did not look the part anymore. And I just also had no answers within myself. And I also just felt a bit like an imposter because I was like, do people think I'm lying? Do people think I'm not healthy? Like, because I was so uncomfortable within myself, I was just, you know, felt really embarrassed as well. So that was happening for, you know, honestly, well over a year. I actually also went on like the parasite cleanse, and I started to try all these different supplements to try and help me out. Honestly, like, nothing was helping. It actually got to a point as well where with all of my symptoms, I actually started to have like blood in my stool and things like that. So then I actually went down the route of thinking potentially I had bowel cancer, and because that is very hereditary, and a lot of my symptoms were aligning with the symptoms of bowel cancer. So I ended up getting a colonoscopy when I very first moved to the Gold Coast, and luckily that did come back as negative. So that was a really positive sign. However, they also did have a look at my gut, and it was very obvious that I had IBS, which I'd already known by that point. And IBS is kind of like a blanket term for we don't know what the hell's going on. And mind you, like, I would leave doctor's appointments and cry. I would sit in the car and cry because I was like, pretty much feeling like, okay, well, this is just gonna be my experience of life forever. I'm gonna feel like this forever, and I am just not gonna have control over how I feel, how I look, and that's just gonna be my reality, and no one gives a shit. In that year and a half of feeling so hopeless, going back and forth with doctors, that's when I started to really take it within myself to start educating myself more. And I was watching YouTube videos, I was listening to so many different podcasts and specialists and all these people, and that's when I really started to understand inflammation and also just female hormones and how differently they react than, you know, a male, and how our body responds to stress and how low intensity training. So I was starting to really be opened up to this whole other world, that what works for, you know, majority of people may not work for you, and every single person is very different, and the way that your body reacts to certain types of training and certain foods and all of these, and even your environment as you grow up as a kid, and if you're exposed to mold, and just a whole other world. And it was obviously so overwhelming as well. But then I was just like, something's going on, and although it may not show up in my bloods, even though when I got my bloods done, they were so out of whack, and my iron was like a 0.3 or something, like so ridiculously low. And like the doctors, like, they were like, oh yeah, just go on iron tablets. Like, it's like, well, why is my iron so low when I eat so much red meat, bro? So there was just so many things, you know. My estrogen was super, super high, and all of these things were so out of whack, but it was never enough for them to do anything about it. and again get any answers. So I was listening to all these podcasts, and one of the podcasts I actually started listening to was Gracie Noren's Wellness Her Way, and she was talking a lot about her experience when it came to her gut health and how she was able to actually turn that around and how she was able to completely transform her life when she started healing from the inside out. And that was a lot of my motivation. I'm going to take it within myself to do whatever it freaking takes to get some answers. So yeah, there was a big period of time listening to a lot of podcasts and all of that stuff. And then I started working with my naturopath. And the first thing we did was we got a gut microbiome test, and that was able to pretty much show me exactly what was going on in my body. So everything from my gut bugs, my inflammation, also things like if I had leaky gut or if I had Crohn's disease and all those things, because we also did start to think I potentially had Crohn's disease with the symptoms my body was presenting and how severe my symptoms were. And Crohn's disease is irreversible. So that was like worst case scenario. I was starting to feel really stressed out about that, because then I was like, oh, okay, this is my reality forever. So luckily when we got back that my gut microbiome test, you know, it's also able to show you if you have parasites, worms, all of that stuff. So when mine came back, the first thing we saw was inflammation, as suspected. I was on the highest end of the red zone. So there's like green, orange, red. So there's certain things like that they explain it all, everything for you, and you're able to really see the breakdown of, you know, what's good, what's bad. So my inflammation was extremely high, the highest it could be. And pretty much in a nutshell, inflammation when going unattended is a breeding ground for pretty much all of the serious health diseases and conditions. So I knew that even though the doctors weren't concerned about the inflammation, I was like, well, even if it's not an issue for you right now, right this second, this is going to lead to something much bigger that may not be reversible. So I was very aware that if I didn't start to look after what was going on right now, this would eventually lead to something that I may not be able to reverse, and that may have a much more significant impact on my health than even what it is now, which was already so significant. And imagine if I wasn't living as healthy of a life as I was, how different I would look. Like I was already doing the most to look the way I was looking, and you know, anyways, my gut bugs were all out of whack. So I had a lot of bad gut bugs and not a lot of good gut bugs. So we are going to have a little bit of both. However, we should always have more good gut bugs than bad, because the bad ones pretty much eat all the nutrients in our body, and it doesn't support a healthy ground for our gut. At the end of the day, is, people say second brain, I'm going to say your first brain, because your gut and your brain are directly linked. So if you have poor gut health, it is going to affect your brain health as well. So your gut health is so important. And obviously I experienced that with all my symptoms, with how much my mental health was deteriorating, my immune system, my brain fog, my energy levels, everything was being affected when my gut health was really bad, which means like even though I was eating so healthy, my gut was not in an environment that it was healthy. Another big thing was, which I want to touch on, my fat absorption was zero. Now, from years and years and years of dieting as I was younger, and always, you know, having my fats on the lower side, and then also when I started tracking macros and, you know, fats being a higher calorie per gram compared to carbs and fats, I always ate much lower fats, and when I was dieting, that would be significantly lower, just for a sake of saving calories and having more calories to play with in other meals. To put it simply, fats are the only essential macronutrient. We could not survive without fats, because fats are essential for all of our hormones as females. It's essential for nutrient absorption. It is essential for our brain health. It helps our hair, skin, nails. Literally everything is supported by fats. So it makes complete sense that I was feeling so awful because my fat absorption was zero. So although I was eating some fats from years and years and years of eating significantly lower fats than what my body needed and not getting enough of a good variety of fats, my body pretty much just stopped absorbing fats, therefore stopped absorbing all the nutrients as well. So that was a huge wake up call for me, but it also, this was two things that like straight away I had answers to. Was straight away we need to bring the inflammation down as quickly as freaking possible, and my body needs fats immediately. It needs to start, like, why isn't it absorbing fats? How? And then I needed to get fats back into my body. The good news though was I didn't have any parasites, I didn't have any worms, and I didn't have like leaky gut or Crohn's disease or any of that, which we really did think that I had. So from there, my naturopath was able to make me up supplements specifically for what my root causes were. So I had supplements for the inflammation, and supplements for my gut lining, and then supplements for my fats. I also had to pair that with a complete shift in my training and just kind of the way I did my meals and things like that. So the inflammation in my body was caused by stress. So my body does not respond to stress well, which we established. And my entire life was causing a state of stress on my body. So I guess from the years and years and years of overtraining, undereating, my body was just constantly in a state of stress and inflammation and was just not ever kind of recovering or feeling settled and always kind of feeling on edge. Pairing that with years and 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 years, that's when it kind of got to a state where it just couldn't flush out the inflammation or the toxins anymore. So everything I was doing was kind of adding more stress onto my body, including my training. A normal healthy individual, training is incredibly good for you, and it's actually going to help with inflammation and help with stress. However, because my body was already under enormous amounts of stress, everything was just adding more on top of it. So my training, the intensity of my training was just another stressor onto my body. Any sense of dieting was just another stress onto my body. Any emotional stress was just adding more stress. Everything was just loading my body up more and more and more. So we had to find ways in my whole entire lifestyle to reduce that as much as we possibly could, to support my body to be able to learn how to manage it all better. So my training, the first thing she kind of said was, you know, we need to move to more low impact, low intensity training. And for me, training is such a safe place for me mentally. And it is such a huge part of, yes, my identity, but also just like training saved my life. So it's such a humongous part of my life that I did not want to let go of. And I just love training. I love weights. I love that feeling of empowerment, being strong, feeling confident within myself. I really, really do try to how great training and weights make me feel. I didn't want to let that go. So instead of just cutting that completely out and shifting all the way back to Pilates, big thing from like the jump that I was like, I want to try and keep my weight training, even if that's less, even if it's not what I'm used to. I really want to keep it. It's also my job. Like, it is actually also my job. This is my content and everything that I've, you know, based a lot of my career around. So the approach we had to take was I stripped back to 4 weight training sessions per week, and I did 50% weight. So I was keeping the exact same program. I was just doing much less intensity, so still keeping the movement so I could also try and maintain muscle mass as best as I could, and then also keep, you know, my love for training and also for content purposes be able to continue to do my job. So that's what my training initially looked like. So yeah, that was a huge shift for me to be able to drop down a training session, then decrease my intensity completely. But what we did was we also paired that with a lot more low intensity type of training for my nervous system. So my central nervous system was always in like fight or flight. So I started doing my yoga 3 times per week to really kind of slow my body down, get more in tune with my body, just, you know, relax my nervous system. And then saunas 3 times per week, and then like my walks every day, and absolutely no cardio or high intensity training. So that was my training. And then also the other kind of self-care practices I did, and then also really making sure I continue to implement things that, yeah, calms down my mind. So that's things like my journaling, and yeah, yoga, saunas, those things that really put myself into a lower stress state. Nutrition wise, the changes I made, so with my whole journey and my recovery from my ED, I've always been a very big advocate for balance with your nutrition. I'm very heavy on the 80-20 again, because that not only healed my relationship towards food, but also when I shifted from eating solely clean foods to having balance, that's when I made the first huge transformation in my body composition. So I stand by that wholly, okay? And I 100% that 90% of the population should have that super balanced approach to nutrition. However, the state that I was in and where my body was at and how unable to process inflammation and how hard it was working and how much it was struggling, I had to really cut out all processed foods, because also the flare-ups I was having were so painful and awful that honestly, I was scared to eat a lot of foods because of how, like, I didn't know what was going to flare me up. Like, one day I could eat an apple, the next day I'd have an awful flare-up that had me, like, crying. So, yeah, the flare-ups were just unbearable. So we changed up my nutrition to cut out all processed foods, even things from rice cakes that I was eating every day. Anything pretty much from a packet, I stopped eating, and completely cut out any artificial sweetness. So anything like sugar-free, anything sugar-free like drinks or syrups or sauces or anything like that. Pretty much just eating things from either the whole food source and something that would come more naturally. So straight away, what that kind of looked like is, you know, fruits, vegetables, proteins, like pure protein sources, and you know, lots of water. Stop drinking like soft drink, like sugar-free soft drinks. sugar-free sauces. I pretty much didn't really have sauces, and it was very, very like clean. But what that was able to do was stop putting my state into a constant flare, because when my body was in that constant flare, it was like inflammation was running rampant in my body. So that was able to really calm down the flares that I was experiencing every day. And then from there, we were able to do more healing when it came to, my training. It was like really easing the load on my body through my training, and not constantly putting myself through another state of stress when it came to not only the food because of all the flares I was having, but then also my training, and not getting myself to a high enough intensity that my body's having to work in overdrive and like then have to flush out that stress again. So it was like just really focusing on calming my body all the way down, and having a really like soft, easy environment for it to work with, to finally try to feel safe and calm and start to just regulate properly. And then also the supplements that I was taking were just really helping to balance everything out when it came to the inflammation, just support my body with that. My gut lining, I was taking probiotics to really help with my gut bugs, and all this. Now, a big thing I have to make super clear with this as well is you can't just go from 0 to 100. So there is stages throughout working with a naturopath and healing your gut, and it is not linear. So it's not that I went from flares to 0 flares. That was not the case at all. It was gradual, and because my inflammation was so high, I was unable to pretty much heal my gut straight off the bat, because the first thing we had to look at was the inflammation. So that's why training needed to take a back seat, and then my nutrition I really had to look after the inflammation in my body from those two elements. And then we worked on pretty much just inflammation when it came to the supplements, because if I was to then try to heal my gut lining, the inflammation would pretty much just kill that before it was able to actually do anything for my gut. So if you kind of think of inflammation as like fire in my gut, until that fire is put out, I can't be doing anything to my gut. So inflammation was the first thing we had to work on. And to be completely honest with you guys, the first round of supplements didn't do a lot. So I probably had like a month starting where I didn't feel too big of a change. I didn't really have as many flares, but I still felt very bloated and uncomfortable and that sort of thing. So it was a little bit of progress, but not much at all. Then we actually did a second round of supplements on the second month. And that's when, honest to God, the progress was quite quick. The inflammation started to go down very quickly, and my flares were not many at all. And if I had a flare, it was like from, let's say I was used to 100% flare, it was maybe 20%. And instead of it lasting a week or a month, it would last like a few hours or a day. So the level of a flare was significantly lower, which was obviously an incredible sign. So straight away, there was huge improvements. And although I wasn't perfect, I was finally able to live life a bit better now. So quickly I started to feel a big difference when it came to the actual state of my gut. And it was also really, really interesting, because I was training less, and I was doing so much less when it came to my training, and the inflammation was just dropping off my body. Like I was just feeling so much better, and it was happening so quickly. And it's like I was working so hard to maintain the least, that I felt like if I stripped back any of that, if I'm looking like this and I'm doing the most, imagine what I look like if I do less, you know what I mean? That was so interesting to kind of see that within myself, that my body was just responding better off doing less, and that less is more. And I was feeling better, I was looking leaner, and just started to slowly feel like myself again. And like I said, this happened relatively quickly. So a lot of people have seen me lose a lot of weight, and although yes, I've definitely lost body fat in that, so much of my weight loss has been inflammation. Because like I said, I would have days where I felt lean, like I'd feel good, my abs would be showing, I'd feel, really, really good within myself. And that was usually the days I was taking my content to social media or whatever. And then maybe the next day I was 5 kilos heavier for no reason. So I started to feel a lot more consistent with the leanness and feeling really good within myself. And that inflammation was kind of just gone. And then it was honestly last year, as I have been on this gut healing journey, is the least I trained pretty much my entire life, other than being a literal child. So that's been huge. And I definitely lost quite a bit of muscle last year just because of my lack of training. However, I definitely believe that has been a huge part of my journey, to experience that for myself, experience how differently people can respond to certain types of training, certain types of stress. And one thing I want to make so clear is like my intent, I'm back. I will always continue weight training. Weight training was not the problem. Weight training is not the problem for me. there is definitely times I can do too much. So from my experience, I potentially was still just training too much, because I do really enjoy training to a higher intensity and really pushing my body and, you know, working to failure. And I love that. I love strength. I love working as hard as I can and showing myself what I'm capable of. I absolutely love that. But it's been just like a good sign to me that I don't need to train 5-6 days per week, and my body actually really does respond well to having more slower based movement, like your yoga and stretching. And my body also does really need support when it comes to reducing the inflammation out of my body, so things like saunas are super helpful. Also, with my years and years and years of, you know, dieting and things like that as well, is I'm a very routine person. And what I mean by that is I can eat the literal same thing every single day for years. So there's foods that were in my daily plan, not even daily plan, just the foods I ate every single day that I've probably eaten for the last 3 straight. And a huge thing when it comes to gut health is diversity. So diversity in micronutrients and, you know, diversity in colors. So that's why they say eat the colors of the rainbow, have, you know, different sources of fats, protein, carbohydrates, vegetables, fruits. Like, we should be getting a diverse range, because every single micronutrient is going to hold different vitamins and minerals that our body needs. So it's so important to have diversity. So if I look back on my diet, so not only from the stress that my body was coping with for years and years on end, but just from a nutrition perspective as well, which is also why, you know, my fat absorption could have been so low, was my body was not getting a diverse range of micronutrients whatsoever. So yeah, I ate vegetables and fruits every single day, but they were the same vegetables and fruits every single day for 10 years. And I was not, you know, I really wasn't branching out. I'm such a creature of habit, but that was a huge thing with my nutrition, is I had to change to having a lot more variety with all of my food, and making sure, you know, when I was cooking up vegetables, I was cooking up all the colors of the rainbow, and, you know, eating seasonally. So having different fruits that you wouldn't usually go for, and just like opting for different things, because they all hold different nutritional value. So that's how I had to approach my nutrition. And then also fats. Fats were obviously huge with me, with fat absorption being 0. So, you know, things like your walnuts, your Brazil nuts, like having nuts and seeds, and heaps of avocado, extra virgin olive oil, you know, things like salmon, all like, you know, good quality fatty meat. All those types of things were so important, because for so many years I'd really, you know, limited my fat intake, because I was like, oh, the calories, like the excess calories, and, you know, trying to stay in a calorie deficit or whatever. And, you know, so I ended up eating so many more calories, but because my body was finally getting the nutrients it was craving and the nutrients it was needing, my response was so much better. And then obviously pairing that with not putting my body through so much stress, the inflammation was just flying off my body. And that's, you know, I was losing weight, what it looked like, but it was just inflammation pretty rapidly. Like the most important thing was I felt like myself. I felt like that was how my body should look and how my body should feel. And I was starting to have a clearer head. My digestion was better. Like, I felt more energized. All those things that, you know, my body started to actually get the nutrients to perform and to feel good and to operate properly. That's why when people ask me, like, what did you do to heal your gut? It's not one singular thing. It's not one singular supplement. It's not one singular type of training. It's not one singular meal plan. It is a whole collection of all different things. And that's why I really wanted to give some context as to, you know, my journey so far, what led to that point, and what I guess got me to the point that I was in, because everyone is going to be so different. And although we may have the same symptoms, there could be something else going on inside. And it isn't just a one size fits all for what is going to help you recover from that. And just because I, you know, had to completely strip back my training does not mean that that needs to be the same approach to everyone, because training in general is something that reduces inflammation. It is something that reduces stress, but on someone with a very stressful environment, or when their body is in a constant state of stress, or, you know, for certain people that could be too much. Some people feel incredible of high intensity training. That's when they look their best, they feel their best, you know, their body responds so well. Other people are the complete opposite, and like, they will look and feel awful of doing high intensity training, because it's not what their body needs and it's not what their body wants. That was my approach. And like I said, like, I felt good really quickly. I was feeling better really quickly. And although I wasn't 100%, and yes, I might have very small flare-ups to certain foods, it was nothing in comparison. And I really saw everything as progress. And one thing that my naturopath said to me was, for every year you have struggled with your gut health, expect 6 months to try to reverse that. So obviously, knowing that I have a good 10 years under my belt, I know this isn't going to be a linear journey. I know I'm not going to be 100% better, but this working with the naturopath and starting to heal has given me my life back. And that's something I could not possibly be more grateful for, was because I struggled so much, guys. I struggled every single day. I would cry most days. I wouldn't want to leave my house. I felt so out of control with my body. I felt like an imposter. My confidence was shot. Like I wasn't confident within myself. And yes, I may have taken content on the days I felt good, but that was one day out of a 14 day or a month period. Like it was slim to none. And obviously we know our angles and all that. And I am just so grateful. And I know not all naturopaths are going to be perfect. I know not all of them are going to give you the answers that mine was able to give me. However, like I cannot encourage you enough. If you have experienced gut issues, bloating is not normal. Guys, I can't stress this enough. Bloating is not normal. Feeling so out of your body is not normal. Having 5 kilo fluctuations on a daily basis is not normal. Being sick every 2 weeks is not normal. Having horrible digestive issues is not normal. Like all these things, like if you live a healthy lifestyle and you have a good balanced diet, you exercise regularly, you sleep well, you should be feeling amazing. You should be. And if you're not, there is something else going on. So I am such a huge advocate for, working with a naturopath that truly cares, that truly wants to get answers, that truly sees you and wants to get to the bottom of helping you feel your absolute best, because it has given me my life back and allowed me to also discover this new part of my journey, which is gut health. And it's not just macros, and it's not just fat loss, and it's not just, training super hard. It's truly having that balance between all elements of health and all elements of fitness, and allowing me to really be in tune with my body and what it needs, and really understanding every single person is so different, and also the approach that everyone needs to take is going to be so different. And also, you can watch this video and get all the advice of me, but it may not be the complete advice that you personally need, and I really hope I can provide some insight to you. However, if you are struggling yourself, it is really truly going to, like, the amount of money you've probably spent on trying to get answers for the issues that you're facing, like when it comes to bloating, like all of those things, and you probably wasted so much money and got no answers. However, if you can get the gut microbiome test and actually get a full sample done of what's going on in your gut, you'll actually be able to heal from the inside out. You'll probably feel better quicker than what you even think, and you'll start to actually be able to go on your own journey that feels truly right for you and your body, and be able to learn so much more about yourself and be so much kinder to yourself. And I am not 100% better. I was feeling really good for quite a long time. I'm probably 8 months into my gut healing journey, and I've lost 10 kilos, which is crazy because that wasn't even necessarily my goal. A lot of that has been fat, a lot of that has been inflammation, some of that has also been muscle. So I'm really trying, I've picked up the intensity of my training again. I'm still focusing on that same balance with my nutrition. However, it's also easy once you start to feel good to slip back on those things that were helping you feel good. So for example, I have not been as consistent with things like my yoga and my saunas and all those things that really did help calm down my body and help my body reduce stress and help the inflammation flush out. And all the things like the diversity within my nutrition, I've slowly started to go back to eating the same types of foods I'm used to. So I was starting to creep back to old habits that were just, normal for me. And I unfortunately have had a really big flare the last week, over a week. And that's also why it took me quite a while to do this video, because I intended to do it last week. I had a big flare. I felt a bit like an imposter. And when I have my flares, it really impacts me from a brain fog perspective, from an emotional perspective, body's perspective. It really did take its toll on me last week, but I knew I needed to get this out there and also just be so completely transparent with you guys that I'm not 100% better. I am 100% better from where I was, but I'm not completely healed yet. I've just started a new round of supplements. So my flare happened because I had run out of my supplements, and then I was away and I was a bit out of routine, and then I had a flare and it just didn't go down. So I've had a flare for over a week, and that's what I mean, that like it's not just a day bloat. It's not just one day of feeling uncomfortable. It's my flares last days, if not weeks, and I'm still currently in one, unfortunately. But I know I'll get to the bottom of it. Like I said, I'm on new supplements now, so this is a new phase of my healing journey, and I'm going to keep learning, I'm going to keep evolving, and I just want to give you guys some hope to the fact that you can get better. You don't have to live like this forever. You don't have to feel like this forever. If you're not feeling right, something isn't right, and I promise you that someone will help you get to the bottom of it. and you can start to truly feel like yourself again and feel in control again, and you deserve to feel that as well. And I know how hopeless you feel, how isolating it can feel, how overwhelming it can feel, how frustrating it can feel as well, when you can see a lot of things on social media where people talk about bloating and people really surface level it, and it's frustrating when you know how much of your life it takes away from you, and how hard it really, really is. And it's hard when people use things like that as clickbait, and to try and portray something that they obviously don't deal with if they're able to blanket term things as much as they are. But I truly can't recommend enough working with the naturopath one-on-one and truly getting to the root cause of your issues and healing from the inside out, because what works for one person may not work for the next person, and there isn't a quick fix. There truly isn't, and it's a combination of a lot of things that is going to help you truly heal and feel better. It's not just one thing. It's not just a drink. It's not just a supplement. It's not just a specific type of training. It's typically a bit of a combination of each, and it's so important to find what works for you, and something that also you can maintain, you can be consistent with, and you can feel good within as well. So I hope that this was helpful. I thought potentially, I get a lot of questions about my gut health in general in my journey, so I thought I might as well put a video out there talking about my specific journey, and being just, putting everything out on the table in case people have experienced something, because I loved listening to people's journey and what led them to that point in ways that I could relate to them, and find little bits that may be useful for myself within that journey. So I hope that this is somewhat helpful. However, I am going to get to specific gut health questions. I've got so many from you guys, and I really wanted to have a dedicated Q&A answer type of video for you guys, to hopefully provide you guys a lot more answers, a lot more advice, and a lot more direction. So that will be in a part 2. But guys, if you have any questions at all from this video, please let me know. I'm sorry this was so long. Your girl can talk. Yeah, that's a bit about my journey so far. I'm sure I'll give you guys an updated one in the future, and I'm still on it. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to heal, and I still am having some flare-ups. However, this has been my worst flare-up in my entire healing journey. So in the last 8 months, guys, this has been my worst flare-up yet. And it's not as bad as it was. It has taken a big toll on me, but I can also reflect and see where that's happened. And I was doing so good for so long, but it's just, again, I'm going to be so transparent because this is part of the journey. You're going to have a flare, and you're going to feel like you've taken 10 steps back, but I promise you that you haven't. And yeah, I just wanted to say, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. But that does not need to be your experience forever, I promise you. And you can recover, you can heal, and I just really, really, really want to encourage you guys to take that step. But stay tuned for part 2, guys. I'm going to film it after this, and yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Please make sure, if this was helpful or just to support me a little bit, like this video, comment anything below. Make sure you guys subscribe as well, and watch part 2 as well, where I'll be answering all your questions. And even if you're not someone that necessarily struggles with gut health, I'm sure you'll actually find a lot of helpful advice in that video as well. So yeah, I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. I don't know how I'm going to turn this video off because Hugo looks so comfortable right now.